You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 30. The Devourer of All Things? Part 2.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I am Marina Kravchuk.
And I am Charlene Schmidt. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each of them special, and see if there's any morals, meanings, or messages that we've learned.
This week, we continue our look at the Devourer of All Things with Part 2. Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you have not seen the episode yet, you may want to put us on pause, watch the episode, and then come back to hear us talk all about it.
That's right. Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast, so please press all the buttons and do all the things. Engage that like button, press the share button, and tell all your friends who watch Prodigy about this show if they don't know about it. Subscribe to us on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. And if you listen to the audio-only version, a rating and a review goes a long way. We'd really appreciate if you do that wherever you get your podcasts. You can also keep up with whatever we're doing on X, formerly known as Twitter, at ML_Prodigy, and that's where you get all of our latest news and updates.
Now, before we jump into the recap, let's do the thing where we put the call out for cadet voicemails. The next episode is the last flight of the Protostar, and it is another two-parter. So just like we did for the Devourer of All Things, please watch both parts of the episode and tell us the following. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn? Then send your file to missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com, and please make sure it reaches our inbox no later than September 21st. Yes, there's more time than usual to get messages because we may have something fun planned for a mid-season break.
Yes, but with all of that said, let's kick things off for this show by answering the same questions we ask of our cadets, but about Devourer of All Things Part 2. So, Marina, did you like the episode?
Yes, this was great. First of all, this is a fabulous two-parter. I mean, we got an incredible beginning of all this. The way the story is moving is just driving me nuts. There's so much going on. So we had a great beginning with part one, and now we have a great, well, not ending, but certainly conclusion to this bit with part two. It really pushed the story forward. I mean, we learned so much. We saw a lot, and we finally caught the glimpse of the lost protostar and its good captain.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What an earned moment. Hard-earned moment.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yes. I really enjoy this episode, and I enjoy this two-parter as a whole too. These episodes, as you said, they move the story so much, and most, but not all, of the threads that have been weaving throughout the first half of the season are starting to make sense, and they are making sense with one another. It's a lot clearer now where things are going, and I don't know about you, but I'm excited to keep marching along. How about your favorite part?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that we have, not all characters, but certain characters throughout the story get wonderful standout moments. We have the moment where Majel, I don't know, somehow maybe, I don't know, very un-Vulcan-wise, perhaps, but she takes the initiative. She takes the initiative to throw away her comm badge and remain in that frankly terrifying ziggurat. I love the fact that we see Tysus being so incredibly protective. That moment was like, you're my duty right now to Majel. If you recall in the beginning when he's not, it doesn't sound like he's much enamored with the cadets. And meanwhile, he turned into a real protective, papa bear, I suppose. And then of course we have Janeway being Janeway, which I love it. It's like it's everything that we've known about her since Voyager, kind of wrapped into this one tight moment where everything is happening. And we're going to be talking about this later on. So Janeway being Janeway is just perfect. And of course, the very ending where we seemingly see Wesley sacrifice himself completely unexpectedly. We just caught up with him. We just know what's happening in his world. He's been gone for so long. And poof. well, I should rather say boom, because that was a huge explosion.
Was a
And then, of
boom.
course, that was that very last moment where, it's gorgeous wherever we are, planet or moon, and you see the bearded Chakotay sitting up there on the protostar. That, as you said, it is such a wonderfully earned moment. So it was like, gasp, and of course, then the credits roll.
And then, no! Next episode, Netflix, please. Not a second too late. Oh, yeah. There are two things that stand out so much to me, like yourself, as a Voyager fan. One is that image of Chakotay. Finally, we catch up to him in the protostar. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, there he is, finally. But also, you mentioned it, tank top Janeway. I mean, it is a really small detail without context. But if you know Janeway and you've seen the episode Macrocosm on Voyager, this is Janeway in high action mode. That's what the tank top means. If you don't get it from her tone of voice, and you should though, because Kate Mulgrew's delivery is very action hero-esque. But if you don't get it from there, you're going to get it from the visual of tank top Janeway, because she means business.
Yeah, that's the epitome of action Kate. So it was just perfect.
It was. And like you said, we're going to be talking about that quite a bit more. All right. How about, what did you learn?
Well, in this case, I think one of the lessons that the episode delivered quite clearly is the fact that you come into a situation which we see with a lot of Starfleet officers, where you have to make the call, when you have to make very difficult decisions, especially in the spur of a moment when things are going, in the middle of attacks or something else happening, or your ship is malfunctioning. Anything, and especially in those moments when other lives are at stake, especially those lives that you are in charge of. So we see this with quite a few characters when they have to do this. Magellan makes the call, Val makes the call, Janeway is continually making calls. So it's I think it's a pretty important one, making difficult decisions.
Yeah. Oh, our discussion is going to be so good for this episode. I decided for what I learned, it is the lesson in practice here, which is never abandon a member of your crew. You checked off the list. Majel, Dal, Admiral Janeway, Tysus, Wesley, they're all doing this to some extent. And we're going to talk about how they fit or how they participate in this paradigm, I suppose, and put it on display.
Thank you, Char, for your answers. And now it's time for this episode's recap.
All right. Well, here we go. The Devourer of All Things, Part 2, is written by Aaron J. Waltke, directed by Sean Bishop. Here we go. In Gary Seven's mid-20th century office, Wesley is enjoying a calm moment of music on the record player with some mango juice before returning to the task of their impending doom. But first, our crew asks, could we please catch up on everything that just happened? It's been a little crazy. It wasn't that long ago that they were running away from some time-eating creatures in some temple, and now they're in a groovy office? What gives? Wes explains that this space is one of several locations the travelers have used for training purposes. And are they safe? Sure. No one really hangs out here anymore. Don't mind the eerie noises outside. They can wait that out as they form a new plan. But that part won't be easy. The Loom don't just devour you, they completely remove you from existence. And the only way to prevent this is, you guessed it, is to return Chakotay and the Protostar to their rightful place. On Voyager, Tysus is preparing an away team to beam down to the planet, but they are detecting unusual life signs down there. Tysus hypothesizes that it could be the same entity that wreaked temporal havoc on Voyager. The EMH has come prepared, though, with temporal discriminator bands that should protect them. Majel asks Janeway if she may join the away team, citing that her telepathic link to Zero might help them find the crew more quickly. Janeway is initially reluctant to include a cadet in the party. It's too dangerous. But Tysus wants her to help and promises he will protect Majel with his own life. Janeway will hold him to that. And with that, Tysus, Majel, and a redshirt named Middleton beam down. As they begin exploring the ziggurat, Majel senses a faint presence she believes to be the crew. They are there. The looms sweep around them, chittering, and then time slows down as the loom descend on them. Tysus is able to hit his time band, but Middleton? We barely knew ye. Tysus activates Magel's time band, unfreezing her so they can both make an escape. Tysus employs an arsenal of grenades that go off and slow down the loom as they run to the exit so they can contact Voyager for a beam out. These creatures are too much for them, and they will not be coming back with their missing crew members. It's a tough call, but Tysus must make it. Majel makes a call of her own, though, and tosses her comm badge so Voyager doesn't beam her out. This panics Tysus when he materializes in the transporter room without her. Even more disturbing, Janeway has no recollection of Ensign Middleton. He's been erased from existence. Back in the ziggurat, Majel senses Zero, but also senses that they are somewhere else. In Gary Seven's office, Zero feels her reaching out, shocked by the connection. With the loom hot on her tail, Majel uses a control panel to send a message to Zero, which translates to a phone ringing in the office. She informs them of the danger she's in. Zero asks Wesley to bring her to where they are, but doing so will expose their position. He cannot risk it. But Dal can, and presses the button just in time before one of the loom erases Majel from existence. She arrives, unharmed, and Zero helps break her fall. They've both changed quite a bit since they last saw one another, but catching up on details will have to wait, as the loom now know their location. Wesley opens a door to yet another secret passageway, one of many in the ziggurat, and everyone makes their way to the Infinity, only to see it being devoured by the loom. They're surrounded by the creatures, and even Wesley is out of ideas at this point, until Dal looks up and sees Voyager. Janeway declares, "Stay away from my crew," and fires the ship's phasers at the loom, which attracts them to the ship. It buys Wes and the recruits the time they need to escape. Things escalate quickly on Voyager. The loom wastes no time devouring the first two bridge officers they can find, and hand phasers do little to fend the loom off. Janeway orders everyone to the battle bridge at once, but she loses more crew along the way. Things aren't going much better anywhere else. The ship has multiple hull breaches, and the EMH cannot make time discriminators fast enough for every humanoid aboard. As the loom make their way to sickbay, the EMH fends them off long enough for two Nova Squad candidates to flee, and at the cost of losing his mobile emitter. The cadets catch up to Dr. Gnome, who is hiding in the shuttle bay. He doesn't have much luck against the loom either, until Tank Top Janeway shows up. She matches shuttle's phasers to the same frequency as the loom's phase variants, and how sad, they don't like that. They retreat. She engages in a wild goose chase with one of the creatures that stayed behind and succeeds, but at the expense of crashing her shuttle. It's a hard landing, but she survives. Cut to Wesley, who is hard at work activating the Orb of Time. It's a device that will tell Wes where the 6 cadets need to go next so they can save the Prime timeline. Everyone, sans Majel, takes position around the device. As it does its work, Dal does the one thing Wes warned them all not to do. He looks into the orb, and in doing so, sees a moment in his future. It is not a future he wants. The orb isn't finding what it wants either. There must be an unaccounted variable. Wes scrambles, running calculation after calculation until he realizes the variable is Majel. The orb confirms and creates a portal for them all to go through. This is good timing, too, as it seems the loom are about to break down the door protecting them, only it's Janeway that comes through instead. She's relieved to see all of her crew alive, and even recognizes Wesley Crusher. The reunion is short-lived, though, because now the loom are actually banging down the door. Janeway wants everyone back on Voyager so they can warp out of there, but Wesley insists that the only way the timeline gets fixed is if the crew goes through the newly created gate. She can see in their eyes that the cadets believe him and are willing to go. They join hands in pairs, and together, they go. Wesley promises Janeway he will seal off the loom as much as he can before sending her on her way, a portal that returns her to Voyager's bridge. As the loom closes in on Wesley, he uses the power of space, time, and thought, and the whole planet disappears from Voyager's view. Everyone's gone. But to where? Wherever the cadets are, they see an old familiar sight, the protostar, and sitting on her hull, looking outward, is a tattooed man with salt and pepper hair and a beard to match. Chakotay. There we go. Whew. Okay.
Wow. God,
a lot of
isn't that just
observations.
beautiful. I mean, yeah, what a absolutely stunning two-parter. I mean, this is just such a great
good
story.
one.
Yeah,
I
love
can't wait
the
to watch
fact
it over
that
and over.
this has been said already. I mean, we're midpoint through the season, and every single time this comes up when we discuss the episodes is that we get incredible development for all the characters. The stories just keep zooming along, and yet we still get, all this wonderful little explanations and the little callbacks and the little mentions. And it's so fun to dig into all the little Easter eggs that the writers kind of put in. And in this case, seeing how this one was written by Aaron especially, we get a whole lot of them. So I love the whole thing with the doctor. First of all, we get yet another I'm a doctor not added to a very long list by now. So we have I'm a doctor not an assembly line when he's working on the time discriminators and trying to create as many as possible so as much of the crew can be saved. And the whole thing was also with him when he shows up and said, okay, these are the refined ones, and I hope they're going to help if time gets really weird down there. I got this wonderful feeling. It reminded me of the episode Blink of an Eye when Voyager crew encounters the planet where the time goes at a completely different rate than the physical world outside. And when the doctor gets sent, he is in the situation when time is very weird and there's nothing he can do. In this case, he can't help. He created the discriminators. So I kind of thought that perhaps this was not meant to be an inference, but I kind of felt that this was kind of a lovely little vibe there that reminded me of Blink of an Eye.
Nice.
The sort of a stereotype. I mean, how often from the point that Doctor got his hands on his mobile emitter midway through Voyager, how many times that was the whole thing where, he's involved in some action. How do you get the doctor out of the action? You knock out his mobile emitter. And it's exactly what happens in this case where, yes, he managed to tag the Nova Squadron kids, but, boom, the mobile emitter comes out. And at the very least, he doesn't just blink out of existence. At least he gets transported to the holodeck. But nevertheless,
Yes.
this was a very Voyager moment. Again, speaking of Voyager moments, I absolutely loved the fact that we get Voyager theme pop up multiple times
Oh,
as an
yes.
action is ongoing. And I have to say that for me to realize that it's there is actually a big thing because I don't know why. I am the one person who, when I'm watching stuff, I'm actually practically deaf to the music playing. So this
Hmm.
is something that I discovered as I started as a fan becoming more and more with Star Trek. And people say like, well, yes, it's the moment where Kirk is fighting Gorn, the music that's playing. I'm like, there is music playing? It's like, I know it's there. It's obviously so ingrained in the action that my brain doesn't even register it. So I am one of those, unfortunately, deaf for all intents and purposes. When things are happening, I don't register what the music is until I rewatch and actually specifically concentrate on the music. So in this case, when I'm watching these, I'm like, there's Voyager theme, and it's multiple times. So
Yes.
this today is a big day for me. So thank you.
Hey, yeah. Well, you know what? I think a good soundtrack, the first time you watch something, the soundtrack will cue you in, but you're not paying attention to it, and it
Yeah.
gets out of the way in the best way.
But it's again, I'm one of the like I have the music at home, but it's
Mhm.
sort of like very much comes after the fact in a
Yeah.
way.
Well,
So the biggest Voyager callback that I wanted to mention, which you're probably going to talk about this as well, is of course the fact that we get the epitome of the way Janeway was, midway, as you said, macrocosm, pretty much any time where she would go to bat for her crew. And it's particularly, lovely in this case, seeing that, she's not doing this just for the crew, for the actual Voyager A, seeing how they're under attack, is the fact that she's doing this just, taking care of the kids in this case, making
oh yeah.
sure that the crew is taken care of and is not, in danger, although seeing where we are in the circumstances, it's kind of like, well, how much more danger can you possibly find? We're already in pretty much the thick of it.
Right. Can there
Yeah.
possibly be more danger than the unraveling of the
Yeah.
entire
And so,
universe?
that moment when she's like, stay away from my crew, macrocosm already is kind of a joke. The joke is, oh, it's Janeway does Ripley from the
Right, of
Alien
course.
franchise.
Yes.
It was the same thing. There is a moment in the second Aliens movie where Ripley is trying to protect the little girl, and she said, "Stay away from her." Expletive. And I'm like, this is just perfect. This is like, it's all lining up. We have like this wonderful matching vibes happening. Similarly, she crashes the shuttle. She comes out with her tank top on and her phaser rifle. And there is the way she says it, that used to be a lot easier. If you've ever seen Lethal Weapon series, yeah, Murto character says, I'm too old for this. It's kind of like, it's almost identical, way she says it. It's fantastic. Something that is also very ingrained in Star Trek lore in general is the whole thing with matching phase variances. It
Oh
happens
yeah.
literally everywhere, and it's almost like a magical way of, did you did you make sure that the batteries are pointing the right way? It's like, have we
Right.
aligned our phase variances here? So, but it does come up, and it makes a whole lot of sense. It's almost as in the Um, in the first part where
Oh
our
yeah,
crew
the
is trying to phase
tachyons.
the loom, yeah, they forgot probably or haven't thought about this when they're like, oh, the loom seemed to be unfazed. But that was certainly a
Mm.
trick that they probably should have tried. And of course, Janeway comes through, and both firing the shuttle or the phaser works out that if you match the variances, you're actually gonna hurt the loom. That's a very very Star Trek moment. I
I
love
thought
that.
you were talking about the tachyon stuff at the very beginning of the
Mhm.
season, where
Yeah.
it's like tachyons and phase variants and pattern
But
enhancers can do just about anything you need them to.
yeah, but it's great that we have this because again, it's kind of organically fits in everything. It's all
It's
part
the
of the
world.
universe. That's what you do. Exactly. And speaking of, I love the fact that we have all these bits on it. Of course, Wesley is the time traveler.
Oh yes.
He works with time. He manipulates it. Of course, he's gonna have some version of the orb of time. And like I'm not sure. I didn't get it that it was specifically the orb of time that we see in Deep Space Nine, but probably some kind of simulacrum of one, perhaps. I
Yeah,
love
I'm
the
not
fact,
sure either. I'm not clear on
but
that.
it's
That might
certainly
be a good question for Aaron Walke,
yeah,
actually.
and the fact that we have reference to Boreas crystals, which works perfectly again because it's the whole thing. Remember, you touch the crystal, you're gonna see a future that's since you
Oh,
touched the crystal is going
sure.
to happen, and so that moment where Dal peeking into the future stream. Like, yeah, that's the danger of doing something like this. He did not see things that he liked. And the things
Right.
that like at that
Yeah.
point we don't know how much he saw. We only see that very brief scene when he's talking to Gwyn in the future. So who knows what he actually saw as a complete image. Now, my favorite callback, probably out of all the ones that we've had so far, is that moment when Jankum, he's about to stand in his spot so his quantum signature can be read. And he's like, yeah, that's gonna scramble my DNA like Jabalian omelet. The Jabalian
Jabalian
omelet. This is
omelet.
it's a deep cut that is so delicious. Pardon the pun. I can't. So just to give you an idea, because this is very meta. I think this is perfect. This exactly foreshadows what happens literally a few minutes afterwards in the episode.
Exactly.
There is an episode of Voyager where Neelix's trying to explain that sometimes you think so much, you're so overworked mentally that you miss just one simple detail, something not uncomplicated that would fix the whole situation or explain the situation or something like that. And in this case, he was describing it via him being a cook, describing that he was trying to prepare Jabalian omelet and things were just not working. And then he had, a flashbulb moment, and I was using 6 spices, but the omelet needed 7. Now, Aaron actually confirmed it on Twitter that this
He
was
did.
specifically, he put it in himself for his own fun. And it explains what actually happens, as I said, literally a couple of minutes later, when Wesley realizes that his plan is not working. The gate, the portal is not opening because it's not 6. He needs 7
7.
crew
Right.
to make it work. I think it's sheer brilliance. You can't top that. You can't.
It really is. And there's even more 7 symbolism there if you think about
Yeah.
it. Like we've got the Magnificent Seven of the 90s Trek cruise. There's typically 7 members, 7 seasons. It's
Yeah.
sort of like a
There's
47 reference in a
yeah.
way of
Well,
where like this has a lot of things going on for it, but I love the Jabalian omelet reference just because that is such a deep cut from Voyager. He said it one time. One
yeah.
time.
And it's just I love the fact that it fits so perfectly. It's 6 spices versus
So
7. I mean,
perfectly.
I can't. And the last callback is actually not a Voyager callback. It's a callback to Enterprise.
Hmm.
There is a moment when Tysus unexpectedly says, "Yeah, sure, Majel should join the crew. We could use every single piece of help we can get." And then he swears an oath that he's going to keep her alive, and he swears it. It's I swear on the blood of my ancestors at the wall of the heroes,
Hmm.
and that actually is straight from the Enterprise. That is something a memorial on Andoria that is very important in the Andorian culture. It's just wonderful that it just naturally comes in like this, and there you go. You have another point of reference with something else in the Star Trek universe. I
So
love it.
much lore. Okay, thank you for
Yeah,
that big chunk of callbacks. There's so many in
I
this
know.
episode. Wow. Well, it's okay. You've got your chunk of observations. I've got my chunk, and most of my stuff is Wesley stuff.
Yep.
So Wesley mentions that the other travelers have completely vacated the prime timeline. So they have fully noped out of the situation for sure. And I don't know about you, but when he said that, it really brought out feelings that this group is really on their own with this delicate and difficult problem. Nobody is coming to help them. There's no backup plan. They are on their own.
This was really unexpected. I mean, if you think about the fact that, I mean, we know that travelers are powerful entities, and the fact that they would consider that this situation is so irreparable that they would literally like, yeah, all right, I guess we'll go, good luck.
Yeah, just the weight of that hits my shoulder square on when I hear the line, and ow, I don't have very strong shoulders. Kind of a funny thing, the way Wes looks at the phone when it's ringing in the office, that's basically my face anytime a call comes into my phone from an unknown number, and I'm like, nope, I'm not answering that. Sorry, Michelle, I'm not picking up. And then speaking of Michelle, was Wesley really going to just let Michelle die?
This was unexpected. I mean, seeing that obviously Wesley's brain operates. I mean, he sees multiple possible outcomes to various things. Just how bad it is, that the fact that he kind of has to pause is like, I can't risk that. I mean, he's already done some pretty risky stuff, seeing he's the only traveler left in the entire timeline, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So that was heavy duty. I mean, I was with Gencom. Remember when he's like, we're basically hearing her last words. What are you doing? Do something. And the fact that Wesley's kind of almost powerless at that moment.
Like, he is powerless, and he's the most powerful person in the room.
Yeah.
But thank goodness for Dal, who has the courage to step up. But I've got a whole lot more to say about that in the discussion.
But it does tie back to the fact that you have to make the call. So in this case, perhaps this was a call, but what kind of call? I mean, seeing that we know that Majel was the necessary ingredient, had he allowed the loom to go, and we, okay, then so our group, then what? Then, that's it. That's the end of the universe.
Right. And it parallels what Tysus did. I mean, sometimes when you're in charge, you have to make those difficult calls, but at what cost? Again, more for later. Yeah. Okay, you've got a great note about Janeway and Wesley. What's that?
Yeah, this was wonderful. First of all, I love the fact that we, when we do have legacy characters interacting, that you do get the moments where they know of each other, which kind of makes sense. I always thought that, of course, people are like, well, you had things of the characters from TNG appearing on DS9, or, well, yeah, they're contemporaries. They work on fairly, we are talking about senior officers, so they're on a specific level where they would somehow interact each other, would be aware of each other. So I thought that was fantastic, where Janeway almost instantly recognized him, even though Wesley has been gone in the prime timeline. For Wesley, time was weird. For us, it's not, for decades. And their interaction, because she's ready to protect, she's ready to fight. So is he, but on a completely different level. So you have this thing was like, oh, you're the ghost, you're the one who's been luring all of us into this situation. And Wesley's sort of like, I am an omnitemporal traveler.
Not a ghost.
And then, of course, the final moment where Janeway doesn't want the kids to go into any further danger. I mean, we already have, Loomis collapsing everything around. Meanwhile, Wesley just goes, it is not our call. And
so glad you
and she recognizes the wisdom of that statement, which kind of brings me to the whole thing, is that what you see in Janeway as a great commander is the trust in handling the situations, knowing her crew. In this case, yes, they are only hopefuls for this for the academy, yet she knows enough of their abilities and everything they've been through so far to trust that they know that they are, that they're sure, but the call, they can do it. They at least that they're confident in the fact that they can make that decision. They can make that difficult call. Exactly. Right. So I love the fact that it wasn't like a standoff, but they were going back and forth until it was like, it's not our call. So I'm stepping back, you're stepping back, and she goes, go. I trust you. So I thought that was a great scene.
Here's a question for you. Was Wesley / Will Wheaton channeling a little bit of Shatner at times, like especially with that line, it's not our call to make? doing the very stereotypical Shatner, and people do Shatner impressions. It's sort of like what he was doing. At least that's what I got out of it.
Perhaps a little bit, but he had to make like that was the key phrase of that moment where like we can be talking about the universe fraying, we can be talking about all the little things, but at the end of the day, because it's up to our crew, they're the ones who have to make that call.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, this was a lovely piece of acting. So,
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny. This very dramatic moment, and he just goes for the Shatner angle to really bring out the drama.
The drama. That's exactly it. And
yeah.
Speaking of, so I just said, fraying universe.
Yeah.
I love the fact that even though Rock doesn't get to do much in this episode, except obviously being part of the crew and participating in everything, she's very obviously is the one who's kind of keeping track of what and understanding what Wesley's doing.
Of course.
So like it's her who says, or like when the like Dallas goes like, well, how all of this, all this weird gizmos and equipment that Wesley's, how's it all gonna help us? And it's like, yeah, that she realizes that snafu is, it's tied with them. And then she says, it's us. So we have to proceed. We have to trust them. And I love the moment when she's summarizing the whole situation for Janeway, where Janeway busts through the door and he's like, what's going to happen? Actually had this written down at some point, but she's like, yeah, the universe is fraying. Wesley had an idea how to fix it, or at least he thought he did. And I was like, it's just so, yeah, I was like,
and that's where we're at.
Yeah, and that's well, yeah, pretty much. So it's like it's not like the kids are getting jaded. I mean, there's so much going on already. But I love the fact that they nevertheless, they're very realistic about the situation that they find themselves in. So yeah.
Yeah.
You thought you did. Anybody else got any ideas?
Right. So you mentioned Dal looking into the future and seeing a future that he doesn't necessarily want. It's, that's sort of like a thing that people hypothesize a lot. Like, oh, wouldn't that be fun to know your future? Well, maybe it seems like a good idea at the time, but I'm sure Captain Pike would like to have a word about that, where maybe not.
So this is actually the moment that I love the fact that he specifically mentioned that those were Borth crystals, because thanks to Discovery, we know for a fact that it's not a hypothetical future. It is something that's going to happen. So in this case, it's especially dangerous that Dal was being Dal and recklessly looked into, and kind of got hit with unpleasant image. So again, we don't know how much he sees because we only see I guess just a snippet of it. But we'll see what the end of it going to be.
Yeah. So the very last thing I have on observations is, even though he might be looking a little bit worse for wear, isn't it nice to actually see Chakotay again?
Yes. Well, we've been waiting for so long. It's almost like, well, is he actually there? Or we're going to discover, I don't know, Protostar destroyed and he's gone. And then what? So in this case, finally, it's like, yes, we have that moment where the portal worked, the orb sent the 7 of our crew to precisely the location where they have to be. And hopefully now we'll kind of start working towards fixing all this mess.
Right.
And that he's actually there, that he survived.
Yeah, that too. At least we know he's alive. At least we don't know where he is or when he is, but he and the Protostar do still exist, and that's what matters right now. How about we get into the discussion, because there's quite a bit here to chew on. I thought initially watching this episode, this will be fairly straightforward because it's a lot of action. It's moving the plot along, but really the more I thought about this episode, the more my mind dipped into some pretty interesting things. So I'd like to start off by talking about the ensign we barely knew, Middleton. How the death of a red shirt could unravel an entire universe. Because I think it's a great example of just how dangerous the whole situation is, just the more you think about it. When Tysus comes back and remembers him after beaming back to Voyager, Majel might remember him as well, but everybody else, nope. Blank slate. Record, he's completely gone. But that's the thing, is he's not completely gone. Somebody out there does remember him, and therefore he does sort of exist. What does that do to the timeline? And then on the other hand, that leaves everybody else, everyone he ever worked with, everybody that he knew, they're all different now because they don't remember him. And since they are different, that affects everybody they know, and so on. Like the whole thing about the thread unraveling the sweater. Wow.
Mhm.
What a
Yeah.
perfect metaphor, really, in action.
Yeah.
It really just reinforces the loom as a threat to
Yeah.
me.
Loom is an incredible monster in this sense. It's a great, absolutely great concept. So and the fact that we were kind of in the situation now where, well, okay, so Janeway managed to figure out that the phase variance works. Wesley is supposedly gone.
Right?
Can
Wherever,
we actually
maybe.
fight the Loom? Because this is terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. It says a lot that not only did our writing team not flinch away from time travel, which is complicated, but they also
Hmm.
did not flinch away from the multiverse, and they did not flinch away from
Yeah.
an epic that could destroy it all. Like they just decided to
Timey,
go for it.
yeah, all this timey-wimey stuff.
Woo,
Oof.
tell you what, tell you what. Yeah, we talked about that a lot last week, and it still boggles the mind how this is all really coming together. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Do you remember way back in the beginning of the season the quote, "You'll be called on when you're needed"?
Yes. Yeah, the doctor says that. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that is a really good theme in this episode. For starters, we have Majel stepping up and asking to join the away team because of her telepathic link to Zero. She calls on herself and volunteers as needed, but then also takes that very big step when she stays behind. And I think you said earlier, it's not a logical move. Most definitely
No.
is not.
Yeah, it was very, like I said, it was very un-Vulcan because it was impulsive. She literally
Yeah,
does, because, as you said, she listened to what, the whole thing, Janeway, you don't leave your crew member behind, but also what Tysus said, when you have to make that decision and you have to make it quickly. And so the whole thing clicks. And off clicks off the comm badge, and she stays. And I'm finding the ziggurat absolutely terrifying. The fact that she just decides, like, and it's not like she knows where to go or how. All she has is just that link to Zero.
that's
Hopefully, link
just
to Zero. And at
it.
that point, she doesn't know if it's actually them or not.
She's really taking a leap of faith here, which is a very
Mhm.
Dal move on her
Mhm.
part. She does not know how she's going to help, if she can help, but she's going to go down trying. She's in this.
Yeah,
So that is a very bold move for her.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact, something that we also discussed previously when Majel became a part of the action. Um, does that mean that she's going to become part of the crew? And now she is part of the crew. She is the missing ingredient.
She
The
actually is. She's
yeah,
that seventh ingredient. She's salt, per the omelet.
yeah,
All right. And another thing that has recurred throughout this season, we have to talk about the never abandon a member of your crew
yeah.
mantra. I mean, it's been a thing throughout every episode practically of season 2, but probably never more reinforced. And to use a mission log phrase, bonk bonk on the head, way of showing it here. And yet, like, that's not a criticism, that's just showing the full power of it. Is Majel taking what Janeway said to heart or what Dal said to heart or both?
I think it's a combination
Hmm.
because as I already said, it's probably all kind of coalesced between Janeway and Thesis and Dal, just to see that yes, sometimes you have to punch through. Um,
Right? That's
yeah,
kind of what Dal did when he
yeah,
stepped up.
yeah. I
And
mean, and incidentally, wasn't that a funny moment where, Dell actually says that, like, yes, even the great captains sometimes have to trust their gut, and Wesley kind of goes, oh, it's okay, you'll figure it out, like
just
you'll
like,
see what
oh,
happens
I'm not
later.
supposed to talk about that yet. Yeah, yeah, a little bit of like it's very short-term foreshadowing because it's not much
Yeah,
longer when Dal sees a little something that maybe he should not have
yeah,
seen. Now, this whole thing of one person taking action to, not necessarily save themselves, but for a smaller group, not for the greater good. Does this go against the big Star Trek principle, the needs of the many versus the needs of the few? Because our command team, I would say, like Tysus and like Wesley, you mentioned that he's very Starfleet in his thinking. I think that is very much in play here. They're thinking about the bigger picture and saving the majority of lives rather than just the small handful of few. whereas Dal and Majel are looking the other way and saying, no, we do not leave anybody behind. What do you think about that?
That's actually a brilliant point, because it is. That's the problem. That's the finding the balance between making the big decision, the key word being big, versus, not losing yourself, not losing your friends. So that moment when Wesley says, I cannot take that, I cannot make that risk, I can't risk that, and Dal says, well, I can, and presses the button. That's exactly that moment where Wesley's thinking about the bigger thing, what's going to happen if the loom consumes us, if something else happens and the universe collapses, whereas Dal's like, she's gonna get eaten in there. Press the button. So
right.
That's the key thing. That's finding the balance between the two.
And you already mentioned how if Dal had not done that and not brought Majel in, and we did not have the seventh ingredient.
Exactly. And ultimately that would have been a greater catastrophe. So how do you make the big decision and you make the right one?
Right. Well, as Dal puts it into perspective, I really think he says it best when he says, even the greatest captains have to go with their guts sometimes. I can't sum it up more than that, because every great captain does do that. Sometimes they cheat a little bit. Kirk has done it. Picard has done it. Janeway does it. Sisko does it. They've all done it. Sometimes you just have to do it. And Dal is really good at listening to his gut. Sometimes a little too much. He relies on it heavily, but when he's right, he's right.
Because as we remember, it's kind of Dal's, going with his gut that caused quite a few catastrophes on the way.
This
we
is
would
true.
have been in that pickle if he didn't lose that phaser rifle.
Right.
So,
Yeah. We've definitely got to talk about Janeway and how she doubles down, goes into full-scale Mama Bear mode. I think you said Tysus was in Papa Bear mode. This is Mama Bear on steroids.
He was more protective because, he was ready to fight. If in this case, is like the fight was just pouring out of Janeway. You would not want to cross her when she's in a state like this.
No,
the fact that it's interesting. It's like we're talking about the lessons, our kids learning how to do things, how to behave, how to make decisions, how to earn moments, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, now that we have Voyager A is part of the story, we can kind of see that illustrated when you have the character that's already doing it. Janeway is already, she's gone through that stage. She's already, that's why she's a great hunter. She's already doing all this stuff. So that's a great illustration where like, oh, how do you protect your crew? That's how.
You
go down with the ship.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And we really needed a big heroic moment from Janeway. She hasn't really had one in a while, and she comes up big here.
Yeah, and the fact that, it's almost like I love the fact that she's out of the uniform. We know what tank top Janeway means, but it also, I think, kind of brought the point across where, yes, she's an admiral. She's a flag officer. She's not supposed to be the one leading, away missions or getting her hands dirty, figuratively speaking. But in this case, she can. Not only she can do it better than most, and she's actively doing it. And then when Portal, when Wesley opens the portal back to Voyager and he says, "Goodbye, Admiral," and he drops her back in. Not only he drops her back into the uniform. I thought, like, that's
and her chair. How convenient.
Yeah. And then, of course, well, speaking of Wesley, we get that last moment of complete. My jaw kind of dropped because I did not expect. I thought, well, maybe he'll blink out to open another, passageway somewhere and escapes, and then we don't hear from him because he's out there doing something else, and then, and the whole planet goes completely out of phase.
Right.
Destroyed, presumably.
Well, so we have no idea.
That's a big answer to that's another question that gets added to a whole lot that we need to worry about now. We've had a whole lot answered. Now we knew who Wesley was and what's up with the whole situation.
Thank goodness we've got a whole second half to get it all figured out, because we don't know if he's alive or if he is, where he is. Where is everything anymore? Where is everybody?
So that's actually one of the great points that I wanted to make as part of the wrap up, which we probably should be doing now.
How do we do that?
Yeah, is the fact that is Wesley dead? Which would be, I hope not. Please don't. with other travelers having fled and abandoned the Prime universe, what protection, if any, is actually left against the Loom? I mean,
None.
Starfleet, as we know, is a bit of in a situation. So can they do something? Are they big enough? We don't really know. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be in Janeway's shoes. Can you imagine explaining this entire situation
Oh,
in a report to Admiral Jellicoe? It's like, oh, by the way, this thing that I
no.
blew you off about, yeah,
Mm-mm.
the universe is ending. Guess what?
No.
Um,
No.
so we even as I said, we have a lot of questions from previous episodes got answered during this two-parter, but we have many more, namely something you already mentioned. So we found the ship, we found Chakotay. So now what? The kids that just dropped in, they don't have Infinity. They don't have anything with them. Or maybe tricorders, I'm not sure. A Protostar obviously looks a bit banged up. It's probably not working. Where are we? When are we? Are we even like, is that something that we can communicate with Voyager again? And not to mention, there's that one little story thread that's still dangling there. What's going on with Solum, the modern day, the current day Solum?
Right?
Surely Essentia, the way she is, I mean, the future Essentia, she's certainly not sitting there twiddling through her thumbs. Something must be
Oh,
going
no.
on, and we just don't know yet what and how bad it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we still need to catch up with what's happening all the way over there. So many questions left to be answered. And I am so glad that we don't have to wait however many months it was between the break, between the first half of the
Like the
first
first,
season and the second
yeah,
half.
that was
Because if we
torture.
did that now, that would be so painful. Oh my gosh. And okay, that gets me thinking because I got a little reflective, realizing that we're halfway through our coverage of
Hmm.
the second
Yeah,
season, and I've been frequently thinking about the best way to watch season two. Is it better to binge it? Is it better if you take your time? Because we've had the pleasure of doing both.
yeah,
We
yeah.
watched the full season before we started our weekly coverage, and then now we've been taking our time doing one by one. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't have an answer to the question I'm asking. And I think the truth is it's because there's no wrong way to watch this show. Just watch Prodigy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. You know what? You're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, it kind of perhaps it even enhanced the way because we did have a mad rush of watching it as a complete binge of all 20 episodes, and now we actually have an opportunity to kind of chew through it and notice a whole lot of things that we missed on the first time.
oh, yeah.
So,
No way we could have
yeah.
gotten it all in the first watch.
But yeah, absolutely. So you watch it, get your friends watch it, your relative watch it. I don't know, random
Yeah.
person on the street if you can swing it, watch it.
Just be careful about talking to strangers. Yeah, and I'm so grateful that we get to do this. We get 10 more episodes and some
Hmm.
supplementals where we're going to interview folks involved in the show. And man, this is a cool
It's
thing
gonna
we
be
get to
fun.
do.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah, and so I guess we've reached the end of our show. So thank you everyone for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or you can find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Next week, we've got a little something special planned, so stay tuned. But for now, let's hear what the cadets have to say about the Devourer of All Things.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
What's your name?
James.
Did you like the episode?
Yes.
And what was your favorite part?
When they ended up in 1968,
And what did you learn?
to never mess around with time and never underestimate how many dimensions there are.
Ramona, how old are you? 15 months old? Okay. Did you like the episode? Yeah, you did? What did you like about it? You thought it was full of exciting adventure while weaving together 60 years of Star Trek lore? Wow, okay. And what did you learn? Yeah, they shouldn't be apart. They should stay together, right?
All right, what's your name and age?
My name is Rook and my age is 9.
Rook, did you like today's episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part of the episodes?
My favorite part of the episode was when Majel threw her comm badge away because she wanted to go back for her friends.
That's nice. What did you learn from the episode?
That you should always come back for your friends.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Janeway was saying about you never leave a crewman behind, right?
Yeah.
All right.
What's your name and your age?
My name is Dietrich and my age is 6.
Did you like these episodes?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
When they got to the Pro Star.
Oh, at the end when they got to the protostar, that was your favorite part? This was a pretty intense episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There were some scary things with the loom. What did you learn in the episode? You didn't learn anything in the episode? Well, you know what we've been learning throughout these episodes is the importance of friendship. So what did Wesley forget? He said something was right in front of him. Who was he missing when he was trying to figure out the best possible scenario?
Majel.
He was missing Majel. And so what does that tell us?
They have a good friendship.
They have good friendship and they all got to stick together and work together. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you said something that was really fun when we got to the end of the episode. What was that?
What if they just traveled that long journey just to say hi to Kote, bye to Kote?
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.